Chapter 14. The Dirty Hun. Another perennial source of scandalous rumor in Hollywood during the 20s revolved on the question of what really went on during the shooting of the notorious orgy scenes in the films of that stormy individualist, Erich von Stroheim. There was ample room for speculations as the deluxe bordello sequences, directed by Stroheim for Merry-Go-Round, The Merry Widow, The Wedding March, and the unfinished Queen Kelly, were all closely guarded conclaves on stages where even the studio chiefs were off limits. It is no wonder these sessions under the hot Kligs were considered to be not just make-believe, but veritable Lupercalia. Shooting sometimes continued for 20 hours without pause on the locked stages. Stroheim treated the participants to squab and caviar and served real champagne in spite of prohibition. The hand-picked extras, exotic women and aristocratic types, many of whom were genuine émigrés, often emerged with the look of having spent a weekend in Sodom, bleary-eyed and staggering. Some girls, teetering on the edge of hysterics, bore evidence of whip marks or bites. Stroheim saw to it these extras were handsomely rewarded for the hours of overtime. They respected their director's law of silence once off the closed set. Stroheim often devoted weeks of work and considerable chunks of Universal, Paramount, and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer money, as well as the personal fortunes of Gloria Swanson and Joseph Kennedy, filming wild scenes of alt-Vine, decadence that no censor in the world at that time would have passed. Certainly not Will Hayes with his prim purity code of don'ts and be carefuls. Since the completed rushes of this orgy footage were only seen by a few of Vaughn's cronies and the horrified studio bosses hacked the scenes to shreds to comply with Hayes' strictures. The censors would then make their additional cuts so that only a few teasing flashes from the orgies remained in the released prints. Imagination ran riot as to what actually had gone on. It was believed that the show, being watched with such avidity through a row of peepholes in The Wedding March, really was worth peeping for. It was known that for just one scene in this film, Stroheim imported a professional lady sadist from Vienna. Skilled application of the spider. The fancy brothel of The Wedding March had featured whores of all races, each with her erotic specialty. The fairies in white wigs and white body makeup who played stringed instruments that had been blindfolded to prevent recognition of the knobs present. The chastity belts of the Negro slaves were sealed with heart-shaped padlocks. One refinement due more to Stroheim's imagination than Austria-Hungary's depravity was a pretty pair of accommodating Siamese twins. It is suspected that Stroheim was burning up MGM money with malice aforethought on such unshowable scenes and revenge for the destruction of the miles of negative of his epic study in avarice, the movie Greed, by his mortal enemies, Irving Thalberg, production chief of MGM, and its new boss, Louis Mayer. Thalberg earned Stroheim's enmity in 1923 when the former was production manager at Universal and took the direction of Merry-Go-Round away from Vaughn after he had indulged in a series of wild extravagances, such as ordering silk underwears with the monograms of the Imperial Guard for the guardsmen in the film. Now that is attention to detail, let's be honest. In spite of the fact that this MGM film, The Merry Widow, was a subsequent box office smash, the fanatic scruples of Stroheim were not made to please the likes of Mayer and Thalberg. They set out to get him and spread the word around town that Vaughn was an untrustworthy wastrel, or wastrel, uncommercial, and a sex maniac. The legend of his extravagance, which began as a publicity stunt at Universal, when his name had been written Stroheim, that is, S with a $sign, during the shooting of Foolish Wives, eventually boomeranged. Vaughn now had difficulty finding backers. The front office men echoed from studio to studio that, quote, working with Stroheim was like shoveling dollars down a well, end quote. The saga of Stroheim and Hollywood, the battle of a giant against pygmies, was doomed to end badly. The little minds of the front office men got the better of his ferocious visionary. After his disenchanted return to Europe, Erich von Stroheim declared, "Hollywood killed me." That was the least Hollywood could do to the most disconcerting genius who ever challenged its cardboard dogmas.